Module 3, Gross Anatomy of Bone. Let's take a look at some specific bone types. There are 5 major bone categories: long bones, short bones, flat bones, sesamoid bones, and irregular bones. Long bones are bones that are longer than they are wide, yet they're not flattened. The femur is a long bone. If a bone is as wide as it is long, it's a short bone. Bones in your wrist or carpals are examples of short bones. Flat bones are flat, and they can be long but are thin and often curved too. Ribs are flat bones. Small roundish bones that develop inside tendons are sesamoid bones. The patella or knee bone is an example of a sesamoid bone. And if a bone does not meet any of the descriptions in the other 4 categories, it's an irregular bone. Vertebrae are irregular bones. Well, let's take a closer look at long bones. There are 3 parts. The diaphysis is the bone shaft, made mainly of compact bone. Compact bone is dense bone matrix organized into microscopic tubes of bone called osteons. It is dense tissue. The epiphysis is at the end of the bone. It's made primarily of cancellous bone, or sometimes called spongy bone. Cancellous bone is comprised of networks of bone with many marrow-filled spaces surrounding the bone matrix. It looks kind of lattice-like with lots of spaces in it. Those spaces contain the red or yellow bone marrow. A third bone part is the epiphyseal plate in youths, or epiphyseal line in adults. It's made of hyaline cartilage in young people. This is where the bone grows in length. Once a person is fully grown, the hyaline cartilage gets replaced by bone, and that bone is the epiphyseal line. Looking at these 2 images of the bone of a youth and an adult, you can see several differences. In youth, cancellous bone is tough yet flexible, and you can see the epiphyseal plates made up of hyaline cartilage. That's a good thing because the epiphyseal plates let the bone grow. In a mature adult, the cancellous bone is not as resilient, and it no longer grows. That means the epiphyseal plates have been converted to bone, and there is no more hyaline cartilage. When bone forms like this, we say the material has been ossified. Ossification is bone formation, so we can say that when a person becomes an adult or is mature, the epiphyseal plate undergoes ossification into the epiphyseal line. You can also see another difference in the articular cartilage of these 2 bones. Notice how it is much thicker in an adult. Articular cartilage is hyaline cartilage that covers the ends of a bone in a joint. Now let's talk about the differences in the bone marrow. In a young person, the hollow part that runs down the center of the diaphysis, or medullary cavity, contains red bone marrow, where red blood cells are made. But as a person reaches maturity, the red bone marrow of the long bones begins to be replaced by yellow bone marrow, storing fats instead of making red blood cells. Adults still have bones with red bone marrow, though. Most of it is found in the cancellous bone of the rest of the skeleton. Take a look at this illustration of the diaphysis of the bone. The entire bone is covered with a film of material called the periosteum. It's a sheath comprised of 2 layers. The outermost layer is made of dense, irregular connective tissue, which contains blood vessels and nerves. The inside layer is a single layer of bone cells. We'll go more into that structure in the next module. Long bones are perhaps the best bones to study in the gross anatomy of the skeletal system because they contain the most features. The other bones of the body are simpler than long bones in that they may not have all the features you are studying. A good example of that is flat bone. Flat bones typically don't have a diaphysis or an epiphysis. They're pretty much made of 3 layers: a layer of compact bone, a layer of cancellous bone, and another layer of compact bone. The cancellous bone in the inside has red bone marrow during youth and more yellow marrow at maturity. A short bone or an irregular bone will not have a diaphysis, though some will have an epiphysis. Yet even though a bone may not have a diaphysis, it can still contain red or yellow bone marrow.